Hello and welcome to Magic and Pathfinder Part 3. In the previous videos, we covered magic traditions and how prepared and spontaneous casters use spell slots to cast their spells. And in this video, we're going to begin discussing spell mechanics, starting with casting time and spell durations. The cast entry in a spell description lists the amount of time needed to cast the spell. This is usually displayed as a number of actions to be spent in encounter mode, but could also be a number of minutes, such as the case with Raise Dead, if the spell is intended to be used in exploration mode. Some spells, like Breath of Life, can be cast as a reaction, and the rulebook states that some spells can even be cast as a free action, although I'm not aware of any that have been published so far, and I'm genuinely curious about this. Let me know in the comments if you found a spell that can be cast as a free action, because so far I haven't found any. Now, most encounter spells require 2 actions to be cast, but many spells that cause things to manifest and persist in the environment, like Blade Barrier, summon spells, wall spells, certain illusions, those require 3 actions to be spent. But 2 actions for most spells and 3 actions for spells that cause things to manifest in the environment, that's just a rule of thumb. Always check each spell's description to be certain of how many actions are needed. The cast entry in a spell's description tells you how long it takes to activate the spell, and the duration entry tells you how long it will last after that. If a spell has no listed duration, then it's instantaneous. It starts and ends on the caster's turn, but may have effects that last longer than that. For example, Soundburst has no listed duration, and therefore it's instantaneous. But the target might become deafened or stunned for up to 10 rounds more. When a spell has an effect that lasts longer than the duration of the spell, the effect is not considered to be magical, and therefore something like Dispel Magic could not be used to cure the victim's deafness. When the duration is listed as a number of rounds, the number of rounds remaining decreases by 1 at the start of the caster's turns, and ends when that count reaches 0. Some spells have a listed duration which includes the word sustain. When you cast a sustain spell, it is due to expire at the end of the next turn after you cast it, unless you spend an action on that turn to extend the spell's duration by 1 more round. To do this, you spend 1 action and use Sustain a Spell, which allows you to add enough magic energy and thought into the spell effect to keep it going for another round. Now the spell will cease at the end of your next turn, unless you spend an action again on that turn to sustain it again, and so on. Most spells that allow you to sustain them have a maximum duration like 1 minute, and you cannot sustain them beyond that maximum amount of time. And if a maximum duration is not listed, then you can sustain it for up to 10 minutes or 100 rounds, after which you become fatigued and cannot sustain that spell anymore. Now, when it comes to sustaining spells, there are a few questions that always seem to come up. The first is, can I sustain multiple spells at the same time? And the answer to that is yes, you can. If you somehow have 3 active spells that all have a duration of sustain and have not passed their maximum duration, then you could spend 3 actions and continue to sustain all 3 of them. The second question is, can I sustain the same spell multiple times in 1 round? And the answer to this is also yes. Per the errata, you can sustain spells multiple times in 1 round. So, on the round following the casting of a sustained spell, you can spend 3 actions to sustain the spell 3 times and trigger its effects 3 times as well. A good example of this would be Spiritual Weapon, where each time you sustain it, it attacks another time. However, the errata also adjusts a number of spells so that their effects only trigger the first time they are sustained each round. This list includes Flaming Sphere, Implosion, Unfathomable Song, Impaling Briars, and Stormlord. so there is nothing preventing you from using 3 actions to sustain Flaming Sphere 3 times in one round, but you will only trigger its attack once. Some spells, like Endure Elements, have durations that say, until the next time you make your daily preparations. What this means is on the next day as part of your daily preparations, you can choose to not regain that spell slot. Doing so basically sustains the spell and extends its duration for another day until your next daily preparations. This lets you sustain the spell over very long periods of time, but if you ever do choose to regain that spell slot during your daily preparations, then the spell immediately ends. And if you are ever unconscious or dead at the 24-hour mark after the last preparations, you cannot sustain it and the spell ends. Also, the spell must have been cast using a spell slot, and you must use spell slots to continue it. So you can't use charges from a wand or other magic item for this purpose. And last, if a spell has a duration of unlimited, like Magic Mouth, then you don't need to reserve spell slots in this way for you to continue it. If the spell has a duration of unlimited, then it lasts until it is either counteracted or dismissed by the caster. Dismissing a spell allows the caster to end it early before its listed duration is up. Doing so costs 1 action. And by Raw, it appears that only spells that specifically tell you that they can be dismissed can be dismissed. Like, for example, Aerial Form says it can be dismissed, so you can dismiss it. But oddly enough, by Raw, a spell like Light cannot be dismissed by the caster. Before we close, I'd like to take a moment to thank all of our patrons. These videos would not be possible without their continued generosity and support. Members of the Basics for Gamers Patreon community receive special benefits, like getting to vote on the topics that we cover in the future, and also they get to see these videos 1 week and ad-free before everybody else. Visit the link shown on the left of the screen and in the description if you'd like to know more about becoming a patron. If you would like to support this channel and help it grow, the easiest way to do that is by subscribing and clicking the bell icon so you get notified when new videos release. And we can always be reached through our Twitter and Facebook pages too. Thanks for watching, take care, and we will see you soon with more Basics of Pathfinder.